myself Ujjal Baro. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is the part 2 lectures video on the research methodology. So in this video I am going to discuss the research paradigm. These are the contents of the topics in these discussions. So what is philosophy? What do you mean by philosophizing? What is research paradigm? Definitions of research paradigm, components of research paradigm, metaphysics, ontology, epistemology, axiology and methodology, approaches to find research methodology. So before going to understand the approaches to find research methodology, we need to understand what is philosophy and philosophizing. So because research methodology is connected with different philosophical concepts such as metaphysics, ontology, epistemology, axiology, which are the research paradigm, which are refers as the research paradigm, which are the components of the research paradigm. So philosophy refers to the knowledge or the finished ideas that have already been developed. It's like a book full of conclusions about the world. It's static, meaning it's fixed, like something you can pick up, study and read. In the past, philosophy was seen as something that was always true and unchanging, no matter the time or place. But today people think differently. We understand that the world is always changing and that our ideas must also change to keep up. This new way of thinking is more humble and dynamic. Humble because we would don't claim to have absolute certainty, and dynamic because we accept that our understanding can change over time. And then the word philosophy comes from the Greek words, that is the phileo, meaning that means love, and sophia, meaning wisdom. So philosophy literally means love of wisdom. You can see in this slide. So that this means that philosophy is about a deep desire to seek, understand and gain knowledge or wisdom about the world, life and existence. For example, when someone is curious about questions like what is the meaning of life or how do we know what is true, they are showing a love for wisdom. They are trying to understand deeper truths and gain insight into fundamental questions that many people wonder about. This pursuit of knowledge and understanding is what philosophy is all about, exploring big questions out of a desire to be wiser. And then according to the Oxford Dictionary, philosophy as a part of knowledge that tries to understand the deepest truth about the world and why things are the way they are. Philosophy looks for the biggest reasons and causes behind everything that exists. So for example, while science might explain how gravity works, philosophy asks questions like why is there gravity, or what is the nature of existence. It's not just about the how of things but about the why in the broadest and most fundamental sense. Philosophy aims to understand the most basics and important ideas about the world, reality and our place in it. So philosophy can take two different approaches, or these two you can see in this slide. The rational and critical approach. This type of philosophy focuses on using logic and reasoning to understand things. It's about thinking clearly, analyzing arguments and trying to figure out what makes sense. For example, if you wanted to understand if an action is morally right or wrong, you might use logical analysis to think about the consequences and whether they are good or bad. This approach is all about being careful, logical and critical. And then intuitive and interpretative approach. Okay, So this other form of philosophy represented by thinkers like Heidegger is a less focus on logical analysis and more about trying to understand deeper meaning through intuitions or interpretation instead of using strict logic. It aims to get a sense of the big pictures by looking at experience as a whole. For example, if you wanted to understand what being means, you might try to feel or experience the essence of existence rather than breaking it down logically. This approach values, personal insight and interpreting human experiences to draw conclusions. So the first approach is like solving a math problem logically, while the second is like trying to understand a poem by feeling and interpreting its meaning rather than breaking down each word logically. So in these two activities or two approach, you can see that the phenomenological intuition. So this is a concept from phenomenology, a philosophical approach that seeks to explore and describe experiences as they are perceived by individual without preconception or assumptions. Yeah, intuition is uh, the immediate direct insight into the essence of an experience. And then phenomenological intuition aims to grasp the core natures of a phenomenon by setting aside uh, biases or existing theories and focusing purely on how things are experienced. Then the hermeneutical interpretation. You can see here hermeneutical interpretation. So this concept comes from hermeneutics, which is the study of interpretation, particularly the interpretations of text, language, and symbolic expression. Hermeneutical interpretations involve understanding the deeper meaning behind expressions, actions, or text. It often takes into account the context, cultural background, and the interplay of different perspectives to fully grasp the meaning. Again, then according to Aristotle, who is the classical thinker, who is the classical philosopher, so Aristotle considered the first and last science, philosophy as the first and last science. You can see in this slide. So the first science because it is a logically presupposed by every other science. The last because deals with reality and its ultimate principles and causes. He defined it as follows that there is a science which investigates being as being and the attributes which belong to this in virtue of its own nature. Now, this is not the same as any of the so-called special science, for none of these treats universally of being as being. They cut off a part of being and investigate the attribute of this part. Then Aristotle sees philosophy as the first and last science because it is a foundational to all other sciences and also deals with the most fundamental questions about reality. He calls it the first science because every other science like physics or biology relies on the basic concepts and principles that philosophy examines, such as existence, logic, and knowledge. It's also the last science because it explores the ultimate causes and reason behind everything in the universe. So, in simpler terms, Aristotle thinks philosophy asks the biggest and most important questions. He defines it as the study of being as being, meaning it looks at existence itself, what it means for something to exist beyond just focusing on one specific area like the natural sciences do. For example, biology studies living things, but it does not ask why life exists at all or what it means to be alive in the broadest sense. Philosophy, however, deals with these kinds of questions that all sciences depend on but don't directly addresses themselves. This makes philosophy both the starting point and the ultimate goal for understanding everything. Again, then there is one important philosopher, that is the Descartes. A famous philosopher made a distinction between the mind and the physical world. He suggested that studying the inner world, our thoughts, feelings, and mind, could be completely separate from the studying uh, the outer world. You can see inquiry into the world. Philosophy is the inquiry into the world. So physical things like natures and objects. Because of this separation, philosophy started being seen as something that runs alongside physics and other science, where philosophy focuses on understanding humans while physics studies natures and the physical universe. It was like there were two different parts, one for understanding the mind, that is the human side, and one for understanding everything outside of it, nature. And then later philosophers began to see the job of philosophy differently. They believed philosophy role was to connect and organize the big ideas and fundamental principles of all the different sciences. In other words, philosophy, was about making sense of the most important concepts that different fields of science use, helping them fit together into a complete understanding of the world. For example, while physics studies gravity and biology studies living things, so philosophy would look at how the principles of both science relate to each other and fit into a bigger pictures of understanding. So this uh, is about the philosophy. And then what is philosophizing? So after learning what philosophy is, it's also important to understand another related idea, that is the philosophizing. While these two words sound similar, but they mean different things. Okay, so philosophy refers to the knowledge, you know, or the finished ideas that have already been developed, that have already discussed. It's like a book full of conclusions about the world. So it's static, meaning it's fixed, like something you can pick up, study, and read. So then philosophizing uh, is the on the other hand is about process of thinking and questioning. It is an active and ongoing way of exploring ideas. It's like the act of having a deep conversation about life, asking questions and coming up with new thoughts. It's dynamic and alive because it's always changing and evolving as we think and discover new things. So that is philosophizing. You can see in this slide. So philosophizing represents this dynamic and humble approach because it's always changing and evolving as we think and discover new things. It's about being actively involved in questioning and thinking. It's like the act of having a deep conversations about life, asking questions and coming up with new thoughts, and it changes depending on time, place and perspective. Philosophizing is about the process of exploring ideas, not about fixed answer. Then the more what is research paradigm? So more specifically, research paradigm is a philosophical base of research dealing with the natures of reality, whether it is external or internal. That means the ontology, okay, the natures, the type and sources of knowledge, that is generations, that is the epistemology, a discipline approach to generate that knowledge, that is methodology, the ethical issues that need to be considered in research, that is the axiology. So these are the components of uh, research paradigm. So according to American philosopher Thomas Kuhn, in 1962, first used the word paradigm in the field of research to mean a philosophical way of thinking. Then it is a philosophy of educational research, how to do a research, and followed by the major components of research paradigm, that is the ontology, which means the external or internal things, means the natures of reality, and then epistemology, the nature, type and sources of knowledge generations, and then methodology is a discipline approach to generate that knowledge, and the ethical issues, axiology means the ethical issues that need to be considered in research. And it is a philosophical foundations or framework of a research work. It's a comprehensive belief system and world view that guides the researcher to frame his her research process in certain patterns. It is also taken as philosophical position of the researcher in the a research in which he claims and justifies how he views the reality, what is her assumptions about knowledge, methodology, and value. So these are group-based positivist paradigm and interpretative paradigm. Okay, and then there are uh, many definitions are there about the research paradigm. So in educational research, the term paradigm is used to describe a researcher worldview. This worldview is the perspective or thinking or school of thought or set of shared beliefs that informs the meaning or interpretations of research data. And Willis in 2007 defines research paradigm as a comprehensive belief system, worldview, or framework that guides research and practice in a field. Thus it is the researcher thoughts and beliefs about any issues explored would subsequently guide their actions. It directs the researchers in the overall process of investigations, including selections of research problem, setting research questions, determining the natures and type of reality, knowledge, and methodology and value of the research work. And then Vain in this and then later in 1986 mentioned that the research paradigm inherently reflects the researcher beliefs about the world that she lives in and wants to live in. It constitutes the abstract beliefs and principles that shapes how a researcher sees the world and how she interprets and acts within that world. And then Hagos says paradigm is perceived as a way of seeing the world that frames a research topic and influence the way that researchers think about the topic. And then Fraser and Robinson further argue that a paradigm is a set of beliefs about the way in which particular problem exists and a set of agreements on how such problem can be investigated. And Goba and Lincoln, who are leaders in the field, define a paradigm as a basic set of beliefs or worldview that guides research actions or an investigations. Dengin and Lincoln state that paradigm as human constructions which deals with first principles or ultimate indicating where the researcher is coming from so as to construct meaning embedded in data. So from these discussions we can say that a research paradigm constitute researcher worldview, abstract beliefs and principles that shape how she sees the world and how he interprets and acts within the world, that world. So it is the lens through which researchers look at the research topic and examines the methodological aspects of their research work being based on certain philosophical foundation. So in similar vein, in 2017 mentioned that paradigms are those important because they provide beliefs and dictates which for scholars in particular discipline influence what should be studied and how it should be studied and how the result of the study should be interpreted. The paradigm defines a researcher's philosophical orientations and exerts significant implications for every decisions made in the research process, including natures of reality, type, and sources knowledge, and choice of methodology and method. So all researchers are required to be based on some underlying philosophical assumption about what constitute valid research that we have discussed in the elements of research. So in order to conduct and evaluate any research, it is therefore important to know what these assumptions are. So the following sections will briefly, major component. We will discuss later on major components of paradigm. So these are the definitions of research paradigm. Then there are different components of research paradigm are there. So according to Lincoln and Goba, a paradigm comprises four elements, namely the epistemology, ontology, and methodology. We have already discussed little bit about this. So these are the four main paradigms, research paradigm, components of research paradigm. Ontology, it refers to the natures of reality, and okay, so so it is important to have a firm understanding of these elements, because they comprise the basic assumptions, belief, norms, and values that each paradigm holds. So in course of research, it is important for researcher to be aware and informed about his or her positions on seeing and observing the world and its phenomena. It means he needs to have clear philosophical perspective about how the reality or truth is viewed, how the knowledge is gained by what methods, and how values are addressed in the research being carried out based on a particular research paradigm. So those such perspective and assumption through which reality, knowledge, methodological approaches, and values are defined under its paradigm are simply known as components of research paradigm. So these are the ontology, epistemology, methodology, axiology. So ontology is the natures of reality, epistemology as the natures of knowledge and the relationship between the knower and that which would be known, and then methodology as the appropriate approaches to systematic inquiry, and axiology as the natures of ethics. So let's discuss more about that. So before we are going to discuss more about the ontology, axiology, and epistemology, so we need to understand about the metaphysics. Okay, so metaphysics is nothing but is the foundational science which seeks to understand all reality, all beings in terms of the universal properties, laws, and ultimate causes of being as such. Okay. So metaphysics can be called the foundational science because the formal object of all other particular sciences must be something existing with a particular nature, beauty for aesthetics. Then the scope of particular science limited to the things pertaining to that science. And science, since the human mind has a natural desire to know the ultimate reality, the why of things, there must be be a science which studies being as being. So metaphysics is the study of being as such. It studies being as being, its properties and its causes. Nothing escapes from the concept of being. That means something which is the term being denotes everything that is. Okay, a tree is a being, and so is bird, a man, or a diamond. So according to the Greek philosopher, began from the natures of things. They studied particular types of beings, but in metaphysics we study things not just as particular types of beings, moving things, living things, instead insofar as they are simply being or being things, insofar as they exist. So we are not concerned with what they are, but they are. Metaphysics studies the whole of reality by focusing on the most common aspects of everything, that everything is that is real. Okay. The material object of metaphysics is all being, God, angel, substance, accidents, real being, possible being, and rational being. Since the metaphysics studies reality from the point of its being, the formal object of metaphysics is the being of reality, that is what is seeks first and par is being itself. So metaphysics is also concerned with such problems as the relations of mind to matter, the nature of change, the meaning of freedom. Okay, so the ontology, epistemology, axiology are the sub part of the metaphysics. Let's discuss one by one. So ontology. So ontology is the philosophical standpoint about the natures of existence or reality, being or becoming, as well as the basic categories of things that exist and their relations. It examines underlying belief system of the researcher about the natures of being and existence. It helps to conceptualize the form and natures of reality and what you believe can be known about that reality. Okay, so deals with philosophical assumptions about the nature of reality or existence. So it is simply called theory of reality. So nature of reality means the, or it refers to the fundamental way things exist and how we perceive them. It is deep philosophical and scientific questions about what is truly real, you know, versus what might be an illusion, perception, or interpretation. For example, imagine you are dreaming about eating your favorite food. While dreaming, it feels real. You can taste, smell, and feel the textures, but when you wake up, you realize it was just a dream. Okay, this raises the question, what is real? Okay, is reality only what we can see and touch, or could it be that what we experience is just a perception shaped by your mind? So different philosophies and science try to answer these questions in various way. So theory of reality is nothing but it refers to the different philosophical and scientific explanations about what reality is, how it exists, and how we perceive it. Various theories attempt to define reality based on different perspectives such as philosophy, physics, and consciousness studies. And then Scotland defines ontology as a branch of philosophy that examines the fundamental natures of reality and existence. Okay, these definitions mainly highlights two key concept, that is the assumptions about reality. So ontology deals with the underlying beliefs that shape our underlying understanding of what is real or true. It questions what exists and how we can know it exists. The natures of social phenomena. So in social research, ontology explores the essence of what we study, whether social constructs, for example culture, power, identity, exist independently of human perceptions or are shaped by our interpretation. Then Cross defines ontology as the philosophy of reality, which means it is the study of what exists uh, and the nature of that existence. So this definition emphasizes that ontology is concerned with understanding what is real and how we perceive that reality. Then Scott and Morrison in 2005 defined ontology as the dealing with the level of reality in events and objects, but more importantly with the systems that shape our perceptions of them. With this definition also highlight two key ideas, that is the nature of reality, we have already discussed it, and then the influence of system on perception. So influence of system on perception, our understanding of reality is influenced by a broader social, cultural, and historical system. So these systems shape how we perceive and interpret events and objects. For instance, the way we view education or leadership is influenced by societal norms and institutional framework. Okay, this definition suggests that ontology is not just about what exists, but also about how we come to understand and define existence through various systems such as language, ideology, and cultural beliefs. So in course of research, ontology makes the researcher to seek the answer to questions like, is there reality out there in the social world, or is it a construction created by one's own mind? What is the nature of reality? In other words, Is reality of an objective nature or the result of individual cognition? What is the nature of the situations being studied? Okay, these are the questions that uh, in course of research, researchers are asked six and researchers try to six these questions answer. So therefore ontology is essential to a researcher because it helps to provide understanding of the things that constitute the world as it known. Okay, so it also helps the researcher oriented his or her thinking about epistemological and methodological beliefs in relation to the research problem so as to contribute to its solution. And then epistemology is another component of research paradigm dealing with how knowledge is gained from different sources. It simply means known as theory and philosophy of knowledge. The nature of knowledge is the study of origin, structure, and limits of human knowledge. Okay. So epistemology dealing with how knowledge is gained from different sources as theory and philosophy of knowledge. Uh, while stating the epistemological assumptions in the research, okay, the researcher seeks to answer uh, and then sorry. So Trosim contains epistemology is the philosophy of knowledge and or how we come to know. Then Balki describes epistemology as a theory or science of method grounds of knowledge, expanding this into a set of claims or assumptions about the ways in which it possible to gain knowledge of reality. Then in research, epistemology is used to describe how we come to know something, how we know the truth of reality. Then Koski and Sudunal stated that what counts as knowledge within the world. Then moreover, it is concerned with the very basis of knowledge, its natures and forms, and how it can be acquired and how it can be communicated to other human beings. It focuses on the nature of human knowledge and comprehension that you as the researcher or knower can possibly acquire so as to be able to extend, broaden and deepen understanding in your field of research. Okay, so let's discuss more about this. So while stating the epistemological assumptions in the research, the researcher seeks to answer the question such as what is the nature of knowledge and the relationship between knower and the relationship between the knower and the would be known. Then Goba also is knowledge something which can be acquired on the one hand, or is it something which has to be personally experienced? And what is relationship between me as the inquirer and what is known? What counts as knowledge? Okay, so these questions are important because they help the researcher to position themselves in the research context so that they can discover what else is new given what is known. So along with these very questions, it is also important to know the answers of the question what counts as knowledge. Okay, so to articulate the answer to these questions, it is essential to be informed about the sources of knowledge, as suggested by Slavin. In intuitive knowledge that comes from a person's intellect or feelings rather than from uh, their senses or based on beliefs and faith. authoritative knowledge gathered from people in the know, books, letter, in organizations. Logical knowledge is the reason as the surest path to knowing the truth, and empirical knowledge derived from sense, experience, and demonstrable objective tests. So these are the sources of knowledge: the intuitive knowledge, authoritative knowledge, and logical knowledge. Okay. So thus epistemology is a philosophical perspective about the nature and sources of knowledge gained during the research. Epistemology is important because it helps establish the faith put in data. It affects how we researcher will go about uncovering knowledge in the social context that he will investigate. It provides guidelines to researcher to define the scope of entire research. Okay, another important thing is an important component of research paradigm. Okay, so in summary we can say that epistemological assumption refers to the nature of the relationship between the knower and what can be known. As researcher is a process of generating knowledge following certain procedures. The researcher can be based on particular framework and research paradigm. Moreover, the researcher needs to be aware of epistemology that we have discussed. These are the questions. So that is epistemology. And then axiology. Okay, so axiology is another component of research paradigm dealing with ethical issues that need to be considered during research work. So it considered a philosophical approach to making decisions of values or right decisions. So axiology addresses the questions such as what is the nature of ethics or ethical behavior, what values will you live by or be guided by as you conduct your research, what ought to be done to respect all participant rights, what are the moral issues and characteristics that need to be considered, which cultural and moral issues arise and how will I address them, how shall I secure the goodwill of participants, how shall I conduct the research in a socially just, respectful and peaceful manner, how shall I avoid or minimize risks or harm, whether it physical, psychological, legal, social, economic or other. Okay, so this is about axiology. Now let's discuss about the approaches to find research methodology. Okay, so these are all are linked together. Okay, so ontology we have already discussed is one of the important philosophical dimensions of research paradigm. It refers to the natures of reality and what human beings can know about it, according to Gubai Lincoln, that was given in 1994. In course of research, the researcher should clearly define about the ontological positions of his research. The researcher needs to mention about how his research states about the natures of reality that is derived from the research phenomena. He should have clear positions whether there is subjective reality or objective reality as derived by the research work. So regarding this, researcher needs to have knowledge of a specific research paradigm. The research paradigm provides clear framework and guidelines to the researcher about a worldview of reality. In the same way, the nature of reality is determined by the nature of phenomena be researched. So if the researcher phenomenon is about the relationship between different variables and testing of hypotheses, it leads towards the objective reality, whereas if the phenomena to be researched are about the human experience and social cultural process, the researcher ontological beliefs will be multiple realities. Therefore researchers should have explicit understanding of research paradigm during the research. And then epistemology is another important component of research paradigm that researcher needs to consider in course of research. Epistemological assumption refers to the natures of relationship between knower and what can be known. As research is a process of generating knowledge following certain procedure, so the researcher can be based on particular framework and research paradigm. Moreover, the researcher needs to be aware of epistemological question that we have already discussed it. Okay, so research paradigm provides clear framework to the researcher for determining the type, nature and sources of knowledge that his or research generates after the completion. So it is important for the researcher to have concrete understanding of a particular research paradigm before starting research journey. Similarly, the researcher needs to be clear about the notions that epistemological standpoint varies according to research paradigm from which he determines. And then axiology, that method. So similarly, the research paradigm is equally contributory to the researcher to define and determine the value system that his or research addresses. In the research needs consider about the ethical issues, that is the axiology. The researcher should be clear whether his research is value free or value laden. For this issue, research paradigm provides explicit framework and guidelines to the researcher. So research paradigm is important for the researcher. Okay. Nonetheless, different paradigms have different assumptions about the value system being either value free or value laden. Axiological assumption of research paradigm help the researcher to think about the space of research subjects, context, and him in the entire research works. In addition, this component is also important for researcher to determine what things and activities are good and acceptable and what are not. The researcher becomes aware of the ethical issues to be followed by him on site and for the side of participant. Moreover, axiology makes the researcher aware of the respect, space, and justice of the participant in entire research. Thus, the insight of the research paradigm is essential for the researcher to address the ethical and aesthetic issues in the research work. So that is axiology. So this is axiology is mainly related to the things like plagiarism. Okay. And then methodology. Okay, methodological consideration is another important component of research paradigm. In course of research, the researcher should clearly define how she is going to find out the meaning of the phenomenon to be researched. So Gobain Lincoln in 1994 said that the methodological assumption refers to how the researcher can go about discovering the social experience, what method you can going to use, okay, how it created, how it gives meaning to human life. Thus methodology is the the theory and a discipline approach that inform about how researcher gain knowledge in research context. And then in the academic research, the researcher has to specify the subjects, tools, measures, techniques such as questionnaire, survey. So there are lots of things, techniques you are going to use to do research work. Okay, in order to get firm understanding about all methodological consideration, the researcher can gain insight from research paradigm that clearly guides about the how aspects of the research. So this is the approaches to find research methodology. So in the next video, I am going to discuss about the types of research. Thank you so much.